Now, this bus, one of the 400 electric buses added to the fleet where the Delhi government is concerned for public transport. State-of-the-art electric bus with state-of-the-art features befitting of a global power to add to its transport system. And of course, viewers, the spotlight, the national capital of Delhi, not just reflecting and basking in the glory of the G20, but also adding to it, and completely spruced up, waiting to invite and receive, of course, invited already, but receive the delegates as they're going to continue to come in. This time around, for India, hosting for the first time, the theme for the G20 summit: One Earth, One Family, One Future. Hop in on our G20 Hop On, Hop Off bus. Our reporters, our guests, all in where we talk shop, but also show you the sights and sounds of the national capital. And joining me there is my colleague Nabila Jamal. Nabila, introduce us to a plush ride. Like I said, most of us, when we go abroad on holidays, we have that bus, a hop on, hop off. This is our G20 hop on, hop off. Introduce us.
And let me tell you, I've taken a brief ride in it and it's super comfortable. So this is one of the 400 buses, e-buses, electronic buses, which the Delhi government has introduced on the streets. And it's so swanky. It's basically going to be part of the whole G20 sparkle here, if I may say. This is precisely where we are right now, at the center, heart of Delhi, which is a high security zone. This very bus, the e-bus, will be plying through with passengers. Of course, you're not allowed to get off the bus here, but it's got full branding of the G20 right outside, but this very new swanky electric bus will be plying through the high security zones carrying passengers. So the speciality of this bus is, first of all, it's an electronic bus, which means it has almost zero carbon emissions, or it has tremendously reduced carbon emissions. Apart from that, the kind of panic buttons here for safety, security. There are 3 CCTV cameras, if I could ask my camera there, the far end one, 2 right in the front here, CCTV cameras and a GPS tracking system to track your movement live.
And the reason why we're in this bus, viewers, because we're talking about a bus, is actually to showcase how Delhi has completely, decked up, yes, but in its Sunday best, Nabila. So lovely, the city.
You know, the lights, the kind of grandeur that Delhi has thrown up is really amazing. I haven't seen something like this the time that I moved into Delhi. This is spectacular. And I think this is the kind of high-profile beautification that one needs to be welcoming world leaders. In every junction, every roundabout and footpaths, you will see all gleaming lights. Some really exotic plants that have been planted only to welcome guests for the G20 there. Some water fountains that have been, placed, spending a lot of money. Well, it's well deserved. The money well spent to beautify Delhi, because here you have the most powerful leaders of the countries globally who are descending. So this is surely one of the best images of Delhi that I've seen so far, Preeti.
Well, it's Delhi's moment as well as it's India's moment. What we're going to do is we're going to go onwards and pick up our first line of guests. Our Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, along with former diplomats, would be joining us next. As we make our way to Pragati Maidan, capturing the sights and sounds of the national capital, I want to bring in our Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, for a larger understanding, Geeta. For those of us, because it's the first time that India is hosting the G20 summit, can you give us, for those who are not well versed with what is the G20, a quick crash course on what is the G20 and the importance of G20. And of course, we're going to bring in our guests as well into this conversation.
Well, Preeti, this is the first time that I'm seeing so much of hype on and around G20. It's never happened before. What is G20? It's the group of 20 member states, 19 countries and the European Union, which actually is representing 27 nations, of which quite a few of them are part of the G20 themselves, like Germany, France, Italy, you name them, all the big European countries. But what is the G20? It's not a strategic forum. It's not. It is a multilateral forum, but not a geopolitical strategic forum. It's primarily, it was formed in the 1990s initially to combat economic problems and the frailties of economic recession that many countries were feeling. It reached, and back then it was just finance ministers, central governors, bank governors level. And later, in around 2008, when the global recession hit real hard, was when there was a realization that there needs to be a grouping. This grouping has to be elevated to leadership level. And so that's when summit level meetings began to take place. In the initial stages, all the summits were taking place in the developed countries, primarily America, Canada, France, so on, and Germany. Later, we saw that there were groupings that were made, and each grouping, the countries were members, would get a turn to become, to host or to chair the G20. In the grouping that India was in, India could have got this G20 summit a little earlier. There's a lot of conversation around whether if it was chosen for this year, given that it is an election year. Nonetheless, it's an important one. And so now India is hosting the G20. But like I said, Preeti, never have we seen this kind of this kind of hype. And why is that hype around G20 now? It no longer is only an economic forum. There's so much of politics involved. To get a perspective on how things have changed, let's just go across to Ambassador Prabhu Dayal.
Now, you rightly said, Geeta, that the G20 was conceived of as an economic organization. The focus was on economic integration and strengthening of cooperation between different member states on the economic areas. But you know, economics is very closely intertwined with politics. As you rightly said, it is now doing it more strongly than ever because the Russia-Ukraine war has divided the members of the G20. There is the United States and its Western allies on one side. There is China and Russia on the other. So, because of the political divisions, the geo-economic activities are also being impacted.
Also the political intonation, sir. Look at it not just through the prism of Russia-Ukraine war. Look at how this thing has been hyped up because of the India-China tensions. It's not just West versus China anymore. It's India versus China too. Xi Jinping not coming, while, you know, the administration would say is not unusual, it certainly is a departure from the past. This is the first time that Xi Jinping is not attending a G20 summit.
You're right.